Everyone, just going to make sure we're all set. Okay, good. I see the caption is going. So hello everyone, it's Laura Glennick. Just to let you know, I have muted everybody's lines except for the New York representatives and Miranda Kennedy, the TA liaison. So welcome to our second State Lead Peer Exchange. It seems like it's been quite a while since we got together. In between, we've had the national meeting, and we decided to be really cognizant of the time of the state leads and hold these calls on the opposite month from the project leads admin calls. So just since it's only our second time and there may hopefully new people on the line, just really want to remind you about the purpose of the State Lead Peer Exchange. The first sentence says it all. This really is your time. It was developed in response to a need identified by you, state leads, to have a platform to share and discuss issues with your colleagues, again, peer-to-peer, not really with us, between peer-to-peer. It's an informally facilitated bi-monthly call. Again, we're going to try to hold it the opposite month of the Project Leads admin call. And then during these calls, we're going to identify an individual project who will present on a specific practice that is effective in helping their project to achieve DEI outcomes. After the presentation, which is about 15 to 20 minutes, there will be discussion of the topic and an opportunity to communicate with your state lead peers. So again, really a peer-to-peer exchange. So for those of you who were not part of the first peer exchange, it took place in February with David Mayer with the California DEI project. He started us off, and he shared how their project is using grantees as effective management tools. And what was really cool through the facilitated discussion, we learned a lot about tools and practices that other projects were using, and we were able to share them as our results. So really, what is the purpose and goal? Well, I said it, but I just really want to reiterate. It's going to provide additional targeted support from other DEI projects in areas where specific projects have demonstrated initiative and success in addressing state-level programmatic issues with cross-project relevance. It provides devoted time and focus to specific topic areas within the DEI in order to ensure that the objectives of the local and a state DEI project and the national initiative are being addressed. And then finally, it provides perspective on similar and diverse state-level issues that colleagues and peers across the country are encountering. And it includes potential pitfalls to avoid, hidden opportunities to explore, and innovative strategies to consider. So our informal rules before we get started. Again, a state lead, today it's going to be New York, and their assigned technical assistance liaison, which today is going to be Miranda Kennedy. They're going to give a 15 to 20-minute presentation on a practice or a cross-project with cross-project relevance, and then we're going to have open it up to hopefully a peer-to-peer discussion. While we are listening to the presentation, we want to encourage all of you to use the chat box on the right-hand side and type up to 2 questions or comments, and then include your name, state, and email address, just in case we don't have time during the presentation to get to you. We will be able to respond to you after. And then in a follow-up email, we're going to share the PowerPoint and any supporting documents, including the unedited transcript. Also want to show you here we have the link for the captioning. So those of you who would like the captioning, please copy and paste this link into a separate web browser. What I'm going to do now is go to the next slide. I'm going to turn the ball over to Tim and Patrick, but I'm going to ask Miranda as the technical assistance liaison if you'll kind of highlight what New York's going to talk about today and why it was identified as a practice to share on a state leads call. So Miranda, I'm going to turn it over to you. And in the meantime, just to remind everybody, I'm going to mute everybody's phone line to prevent as much as we can background noise.
Great. Thank you, Laura. It's great to be on with everyone. We're getting back. Laura, could you mute the other lines?
I'm in the process of doing
Great,
that.
Thanks. Some folks might have come on just a little bit later, and so the lines might not be muted. But okay, great. That should help. Thank you. Okay, it's great to be on with everyone, and I have to say that I'm excited, really excited about introducing today's presentation from our New York DEI project. Patrick Pasquarella will be presenting on the genesis and evolution of the New York State DEI training funds, which were based on the flexible employment funds concept. And Tim Casella and Kevin Nickerson, who joined Patrick on the New York DEI leadership team, will also be participating and responding to questions during our follow-up discussion. So as the technical assistance liaison for New York, it's really been a pleasure and a privilege working with Patrick, Tim, and Kevin on the strategic development of the New York State DEI training funds. These funds were developed to address a huge challenge that the New York project was facing. And when I say huge, that's not just Miranda engaging in hyperbole. It was a pretty magnificent challenge they faced, and there were some sleepless nights on all of our parts trying to figure out how to address this challenge. So it's with relief that I can now report that not only has the New York leadership team addressed that challenge, which Patrick will explain in much more detail in their presentation, but they've addressed it in such an innovative way that they've created an opportunity out of that crisis that will bring about a significant increase in meaningful and sustainable employment outcomes for job seekers with disabilities in New York through a direct connection with WIA intensive and training programs. Meanwhile, they've also managed to tie together the many various components of their DEI project into this strategy, and this is moving them forward in meeting their goals and objectives under the grant. And this is why we're sharing this promising practice, which we consider very promising and which is still very much in its implementation stages, with all of you on today's State Lead Peer Exchange. So hopefully now I've got you all excited as well to hear more from Patrick about those DEI training funds. Patrick, take it away.
Okay. Hey, Miranda. Thanks very much for those kind words. Hello, everybody. It's great to be here today to be able to share with you our DEI Training Fund project that we implemented here in New York State. Just to give you a flavor of what New York State's all about here, we have 13 pilot sites. And with the pilot sites, that makes up about 30 one-stop career centers or job centers. And there's 27 DRCs currently on staff. But as Miranda mentioned, we definitely had a big problem last year when we received our grant award of about $5.5 million. We went along with the philosophy of past grants that we would get a no-cost extension, granted to us. So operating under that context, we were told last year that there would be no-cost extensions allowed. So we found ourselves in a considerable underspending situation. Actually, as of August 31st of last year, we spent about 42% of the grant, and we should have been at 63% of the grant. Now, I'm not going to really go into details of why we were underspending, but the primary reason was we set our budget when we submitted our proposal. Our budget was basically starting at day one, and it took probably 4 to 6 months to get fully operational. So if we budgeted 2.5 years versus a 3-year grant, we would definitely be on target for spending. But we definitely had a problem. Underspending was a major problem, and we needed to develop some strategy to hopefully eliminate this underspending situation. So what we did here was, actually, ironically, we were in Ithaca with our DRCs at a statewide conference back in October of last year, and Miranda brought to our attention that Maine was doing a flexible employment fund type program. And so that piqued our interest. So we dove more into what Maine was doing. We researched with Maine's flexible employment funds, and we see that they were offering one-time short-term financial assistance to people with disabilities who are experiencing barriers to maintaining or obtaining employment. And that included offering like emergency housing or transportation, emergency repair, adaptive equipment, or work uniforms. But we wanted to take it a step further. So we realized in the one-stop centers that WIA resources were, each year are getting less and less. And we looked at some data from our research and statistics department that showed only 3% of DEI customers received training services since the start of our grant, October 1st, 2010, through August 31st, 2012. So 3%, that's a very, very low number. So with that, we said, it's time that we really dove into this potential DEI training fund situation. So we took the prospect to our senior management here in New York State, and we had no problem selling them on this idea, because we definitely said that, we would see an increase in performance measures and outcomes if we were able to have these training funds, as well as ticket revenue. We could see a potential increase there. So we got the green light within matters of days from our executive staff here, and then it was time to bring the proposal to our federal project officer, and that was Trevor out of Boston. And we wrote up a nice justification letter to him, and he came back with a few minor questions, and literally within days we had approval from our federal project officer to go forward with this. So what we did here was we identified approximately a projection of about $750,000 we would be underspent at the end of our grant, September 30th of 2013. So that was our magic number there, $750,000. So we earmarked those dollars, and then we moved forward with setting the proper procedures and policies in place for implementing this DEI training. So that brings us to the slide here with eligible participants. We kept it kind of simple, but we wanted to, first off, help the customer who is self-disclosing a disability and is determined in need of training services in order to increase employability. We do not require documentation of the disability here. Now, really the big thing here is the WIA enrollment. The single most critical piece of the DEI training funds in New York is the tie with the WIA enrollment. We want to see customers who are enrolled in either WIA intensive and/or WIA training services. Now, we also are not mandating that the customers who are going to receive training funds have to be a ticket holder, but we definitely would like to see a priority of service to be offered to SSA beneficiaries as an incentive for them to assign their ticket to the one-stop center. And we're also not mandating that the participants of training funds are part of an IRT, but we definitely encourage our DRCs to form an IRT around individuals who are being served with these training funds. So that, basically, in simple terms, are the eligible participants for the project here. And with that being established, we needed to communicate to the local level what the guidelines were for our project here. And we weren't going to play big brother here at the state. We were basically going to transfer to the local level and have them mandate through their local level policies and procedures pertaining to individual training accounts, supportive services, and needs-related payments. So here, again, the state is taking more of a backroom approach and letting the local level make the decision-making. We'll set them a few stages of what our requirements are. Number one, though, is with regards to the training providers that they choose. At the local level, they must be training providers that are found on our New York State Department of Labor's eligible training provider list, and that list is on our website. So we did mandate that. And we also indicated that because our funds are ending September 30th, we needed to have the training paid for or accrued by the end of the grant period. So this means that as long as someone starts training on or before September 30th, 2013, we're fine with that, but we can't have an individual start training after September 30th, 2013. Now, with regards to, we did communicate to the local levels what like allowable training services, and it covers the whole gamut here. As the slide shows, we've touched upon occupational skills training, on-the-job training, and private sector training programs, entrepreneurial training, customized training. So it runs the whole gamut, and we're definitely also encouraging supportive services as well. So we will allow and will pay for if somebody needed a gas card or a bus token or child or dependent care. And if we also encourage the local areas, if there's any gray areas that they're not, comfortable with, to please reach out to us. And we've gotten a lot of inquiries about allowable training services from our local areas. Now, with regards to the training fund allocation, this was our strategy with that. We did an analysis. As I said, we had underspending. Our projections was about $750, and that was conservative. Some numbers were telling us even up to $1 million we would be underspent once this project ended. So with that said, we allocated the $750,000, and we reached out to each of our 13 pilot sites, to the WID managers, and asked them how much they would be comfortable with receiving in training funds to implement a successful project here. So once we got those numbers, we reviewed them, and basically there was only 3 areas that we needed to decrease the request. So all areas pretty much got what they asked for, but we didn't send the money to them, the full pot of money. What we did was we sent in December half the allocation to the one-stops, to the local areas. Now, the half of the allocation, the reason we did that is because we wanted to be able to measure how they're performing with the program and the training services. So as of May 31st, once the expenditures are reported, we're going to look at the numbers in June and see if there's areas that aren't really spending down the training funds, and then look at those areas that are spending. And potentially, if an area is not really working well with the training funds, they could forfeit or potentially lose receiving their second half of their allocation. So this is our approach for that, and it kind of instills some friendly competition within our pilot sites, because when we were meeting with our DRCs just a few weeks ago, just the excitement in their voices about having these available funds, they definitely don't want to forfeit any of them. So we're going to be reviewing closely in the next month how the spending is going against these training funds. But really getting to the nuts and bolts of all this, the training funds has definitely made a positive impact, both directly and indirectly, on some of the goals that New York State has identified in our proposals to the federal government. And without any further explanation on all the specific goals, we've highlighted some here on this slide. Particularly, we're going to hope to see an increase in ticket revenue as customers are able to reach further milestone and outcomes with the addition of these training services. We're also going to see an increase in the number of customers disclosing a disability and being enrolled in WIA, and we are already seeing that happen. We're seeing an increase in the number of IRTs being conducted. And we do see more partners coming to the table, because the word's out there now that there's these training funds available, so more partners at the local level are coming to the table through the IRT process, and some are even offering to share expenses and what have you. So that's definitely a good thing that we're seeing, and we're hearing that directly from our DRCs. Now, with regards to asset development, we're seeing now with the increase in IRTs and the collaboration at the local level that there will be more asset development possibilities. So overall, there's definitely a positive impact that these DEI training funds are having, And we're going to even be more excited to review months down the road to see those that have gone through the training and what type of employment they're obtaining and the employment retention rate associated with that. Now, with the final slide we have here, just an example that really we touched upon with our DRC meeting back in 2 weeks ago in Ithaca. One of our DRCs told us about a customer that they had who was interested in becoming an LPN, and they were going through some various coursework, but they wanted to, they heard about the training funds, and the training provider in turn referred them to the one-stop center for assistance on this, and the DRC met with the person and was able to enroll them in some coursework to obtain the LPN. But during the coursework, they had some medical situation that caused them to fall behind on their coursework. And what the DRC did was convene an IRT with the DRC in the one-stop, with the customer, with the job center, the WIA training coordinator, and then the training provider instructor, and the training provider's business manager. And collectively, they came up with a solution that enabled the individual to continue their training. And currently, they're still, I guess they're on honor roll status and set to graduate in June of 2013. So that was a really feel-good story associated with the training funds. And we also have to tip our hats to the Syracuse area. The DRC out there actually, when we announced the training funds and we released the funds, half of the funds to the Syracuse area, this DRC actually set up on-site visits to several community colleges and BOCES and was marketing the training funds on site with these entities and enrolling customers right on site. And the Syracuse area, as a result, actually blew through their $100,000 allocation in matters of weeks. So that was definitely a feel-good story there. But what I've done here is just gave you a flavor, some of the basics regarding this DEI training funds. We're excited of how it's going, and I definitely would like to ask any of my colleagues here, Tim Casella, Kevin Nickerson, or Miranda, if they'd like to add anything further to the slide presentation I just did.
Well, Patrick, this is Miranda, and I do just want to... Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. Hi, Miranda.
Hi. No, I just wanted to say, you know, one final thing about this work that's been done in New York before we move into our discussion. And it's that really none of this could have been accomplished without a true team effort at all levels. So, you know, if you look at it from the national level, the FPO, the National DEI Program Office, the TA liaison, you know, all provided vital support to state leadership around this concept and its implementation at key moments, you know, and really helped to brainstorm, strategize, and bring about access to those newly minted DEI training funds. And additionally, the concept itself came from another DEI project state. And then if you look at it from the state level, the leadership team in New York, you know, you faced a major challenge, and we're very strategic and purposeful in how you addressed it. And, you know, making the case to state government, to the FPO, to the local DEI pilot sites, and getting buy-in from all corners, and also managing to do that with impressive speed. You know, so taking this idea from concept to implementation in such a short period of time, you know, that's challenging. And what's really key to all of that is that during that short turnaround, you know, it was important that the leadership team kept a close eye on the many details as well as the larger end goal that was being pursued, and that was done. So, you know, our hats are off to you. And then if you look at the local level, the DEI pilot sites, they all saw the benefits of this concept, especially as it relates to outcomes, and then signed on to move forward and are doing so. And we see that, you know, these examples are perfect. You know, they really reflect what's happening out there. There are so many other examples we managed to get into 2 weeks ago. It was great. And then last but definitely not least, those DRCs have been implementing this strategy in the field like Patrick's been talking about, innovating as they go and really bringing about those highly desired outcomes. And it's been great to be a part of that, and it's such an exciting thing. And we're looking forward to hearing what other states are doing, what they think of this concept. And so, you know, if Tim or Kevin would like to add anything to that, we certainly can do so. Otherwise, we can hand it over to Laura to open up the lines. So, Tim or Kevin?
Yeah, this is Kevin. I'll just say I need to echo part of what you said, Miranda, because kudos to Patrick and Tim negotiating this at the speed we had this move. I mean, it went from idea at the end of October to funds at our sites in December. And the other thing I want to mention is that this has just been such a encouragement to our sites to empower them, to help our ticket holders, not just by supporting them with themselves as a resource and their knowledge, but with training now they can access and actually negotiate themselves, the DRCs. So it's really empowered our DRCs, and it's empowered some of the movement of our ticket program, which is very exciting to me.
Miranda and Kevin, this is Patrick. Thanks very much for that feedback. And Miranda, you hit upon it. Teamwork was definitely that's the big word here. Teamwork from all levels. And I've never seen things move so quick here at the state. So definitely hats off to everybody involved.
Well, thank you, Patrick, Tim, and Kevin, and Miranda. This is Laura again, and I absolutely love the State Lead Peer Exchange. I was looking at the participants, and we have 18 of the 23 projects represented, and I think that's pretty cool. So what we really want to do now is what we said at the beginning. It is meant to be a State Lead Peer Exchange. Patrick shared what's being done in New York, and we want to hear from you. I do have a question that is in the chat box, which I'll share with you, Patrick. I also, using the meeting center, everyone has the capability of raising their hand, and we can unmute you. But first, I'm going to try a new function we have, some polling questions. I'm sure that Patrick would be interested, as well as the TA liaisons. Do other states have these type of funds? And if so, how do you use them? So now I have a poll. I just hopefully put up 3 questions that I'm hoping people can see. Miranda, do you see them?
Yes, we can see those.
Okay, good. So I'm hoping people can take this poll. There are 3 questions.
Oh, you'll need to be quick, too, because we only have a minute and 20 seconds are done. Be quiet and let people fill that out.
I didn't give you much time. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's see. So about 22% included Flex Fund. 19% didn't. Some are uncertain. Let's see. About the same. No, 26 are using them. 26 included them. 22 are using them. You have 17. This is kind of funny. And if you're using them, are you using them for WIA intensive and training? Wow, 30% of you said yes.
And Laura, you can hit share, and then we can all see the results too.
Okay, let's see. Again, we're just using this for the first time. So let's see, new poll.
Okay.
I don't know that there's a
share with all participants, no?
Share with attendees.
Yes.
How's that? Let's see what happens.
There you go. Okay, now everyone can see how everyone responded. And the people who had no answers, some of those might include myself, some of the TA liaisons on the call. But
okay, 26.
Or maybe, Laura, next time we just give them a little bit more time.
Yeah, so we're learning as we go, a new function, so this is kind of cool. So now let's go to the discussion part. And I'm going to kind of take this down. Let me save this. Okay, let me start, Patrick, with a question that we had in the chat box. And the first question comes from Larry Eisenstadt. And Larry, after I ask the question, I will unmute your phone line too. His question is, what standards measures did you use to determine success? And he asks, is it regionally based? Is it the greater New York versus New York City, et cetera? So again, what standards, measures did you use to determine success? And Larry, I am going to unmute your phone line too. So if you want to say anything, your phone's unmuted.
Okay, I was interested in how that all was determined. Did you use WEA standards, WEA adult standards? What exactly was used to determine that you've reached what you needed to reach?
Oh, hi, Larry. Actually, we're still a work in progress here. We are measuring, we have a report card that we generate on a quarterly basis that captures the core intensive and training services within our one-stops that have the DRCs, and obviously the enrollment as well as entered employment and the employment retention rate. And we're going to be closely looking at those numbers, but because of the lag, and this project being really new since December when we released the funds, we'll be paying more attention based on prior numbers that we already have available before this training funds have implemented. But we also receive a monthly report from our DRCs that has a lot of the service deliverable, and they speak to that points like the IRT usage and asset development and stuff. So we're seeing an increase in volume with those monthly reports that we're receiving from the DRCs. And it's not based regionally, or it's more so on a statewide basis. And New York City area opted not to participate in this project, so they're not part of the DEI.
I gotcha.
Does that help at all?
That helps. So you don't see, at this point, you haven't established benchmarks as to what would constitute success or failure, and you're just waiting to see how the numbers are going to come in.
Well, as far as we know what the numbers have been prior to this, and we're definitely going to be looking to see a significant increase by injecting these DEI training funds. And that is going to take a lag, though, to get the final results on that.
Okay. I appreciate
Larry,
that. Thank you.
You also had another question, which you wanted to know if they think that this concept would work for youth. And I know Minnesota is a youth project.
Correct. Do you have does New York have any thoughts on how what you have done in New York State would have applicability to a youth state such as Minnesota? Oh,
that I'm not part of the youth program here, so I don't know how, I couldn't answer that, but I can get an answer for you on that one.
Okay, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, that I'm sorry about that, but I had some of the youth staff here. They'd be able to answer that.
And Larry, we'll remember that too. We'll also talk to your TA liaison, DJ Ralston, who is in Minnesota. I do.
Right, she's here now.
That's a good question for her too.
She's here now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good question for her. So great.
Okay.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
I'm going to mute your line. Okay, I'm going to go to the next question, Patrick and Tim. It is from Mark Williams from Illinois. He actually had to get off the call early, but he still wanted me to ask the question, and he said he'll check out the transcript. And he said his question is there a way to articulate who the team was, quote unquote, who the team was? In other words, which specific agencies had to collaborate at what level to make this happen?
Sure, I can answer that. The team, well, we have a New York State, there's co-state leads, which is myself and Tim Casella. And then we have our state lead DRC, Kevin Nickerson, and then we have our technical liaison, Miranda. But with regards to New York State Department of Labor, we're the ones who receive the funds. We're the grantee, and then we transfer the funds out through the Notice of Obligational Authority process to the local areas. But to get the approval here, it was myself and Tim Casella working with Kevin and Miranda to get a justification together, and then I presented that justification to our Deputy Commissioner for Workforce Development, Karen Coleman, and then she in turn provided that justification to our Executive Deputy Commissioner, Mario Musolino. And that's where we got the green light from our Department of Labor executive staff, and then we needed to go to our federal project officer to get the green light from the federal project officer. And that basically was the organizational input as far as getting these funds approved.
Okay, great. Thanks again. And Patrick, as I said, Mark he's not on the line, but I know he'll read the transcript. So now I'm going to go to Sinclair in Virginia. Sinclair, I am going to try to unmute your line. And Sinclair, I've unmuted your line, so if you just want to go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, thank you, Laura. My question is, were all of the customers that you're using these funds on co-enrolled in WIA? And I'm asking because you spoke about a DRC going to the community college and signing folks up there, so I wasn't sure if all those folks are co-enrolled in WIA.
Sinclair, Kevin, our DRC captain there, were you in touch with Lorraine, Kevin, that you could provide some input to that question?
That was one of the requirements for any of the folks that we assisted with these funds. Sinclair, it's a good question, but that's a requirement for anybody that utilized these funds. Now, our DRC in Syracuse, although she did some on-site recruiting, I suppose you could call it, would have made sure that each of those folks was co-enrolled.
Okay, because in Virginia we have what we call the First Dollar Down Fund, flexible fund, and we don't require WIA, so in some cases there may be people who are maybe utilizing the Workforce Center and also co-enrolled with folk rehab, and we might buy hearing aids, or there may be other things. In one case there was someone who needed a prosthetic device that the health insurance company wouldn't purchase. So not all of our folks are co-enrolled. We do pay for training classes and buy glasses for people and pay rent for a month and those kinds of things.
And if I could just comment on that, Sinclair, I think that actually has great usefulness in other ways. You know, I think what we're trying to do here, I mean, we're trying to get enough revenue just to keep us afloat, but what we envision and would love to see is that we have enough flexible ticket revenue eventually to handle some of those things that we can't handle through WIA and through our local policies. We've achieved that in some of our areas through some of our asset coalition work, but we want to achieve that more broadly. So that's kind of the ultimate. If we could have, you know, what we're doing here to get folks enrolled and get the results on record, really, and the increase, as someone asked about what success was, and frankly, I think success is we were at about 3% of the folks with disabilities that self-disclosed in our state that had utilized WIA training funds, if I'm correct, Patrick, on that, and we want to see that increase. So it's simple for us. I think we want to see those numbers much higher than that. But we'd love to have that other side of the fence, too, eventually, where we have a flexible fund that doesn't necessarily follow some of our local policy, and the only way we're going to get there is if we also have some flexible ticket revenue.
Okay.
Thanks,
Sinclair. We have a couple questions from Dave Mayer in California. Dave, I think your phone's unmuted.
It is.
It is, so.
Hey, guys. Hey, Kev, how you doing?
Good. How you doing, Dave?
Doing all right, thanks. Enjoying the weather. Absolutely. Got a couple of questions just leading up to just kind of trying to figure things out here. So did New York originally have some flex funding that was set aside for the local areas? originally, before this project began that we're talking about here?
Patrick, I'll defer to you on that since you were in the grant reception.
Do you mean we never asked for that in our grant proposal? Is that what you mean, or before even the DEI?
But no, during the DEI.
Oh yeah, no, we never asked for that when we wrote the grant proposal, and we included other categories like consultant services and conferences and such, but a lot of that with the new administration got sidebarred, so that also increased our underspending. But no, we never asked for it in our original proposal.
Okay. I appreciate that, because we did originally. We got 10% to start with.
Great.
A couple other questions before I kind of share what we've been doing with it. Now, you said that in one of your slides that as long as a local area or a DRC has somebody in training before the end of the grant and the training, the funding is accrued, that they can still utilize this money for the training? I'm a little bit... Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Let me clarify that here. With regards to, it's all accounting, and our fiscal people basically informed us about this. As long as somebody is enrolled and has started training on or before September 30th, 2013, that's when our grant ends.
Right.
They can continue that training even if it goes right up until January or December or what have you. But the operative word here is they need to be in training on or before September 30th.
Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
We try to, in our initial release, our technical procedure release indicated that as long as they accrued the expenditure, they could start after September 30th, but we got told to redact that. That was not correct. That
was obligated, not accrued.
Yeah. So that's where we stand with that. They just need to start the training on or before September 30th.
So the funding, so the training provider needs to be paid before September 30th.
Right.
Okay, that's what I was getting at, because it kind of sounded like you were going to hold on to the money and then pay them, because it's kind of dangerous to pay somebody all up front, particularly if they're in a long-term training, not knowing what the outcomes are if the person's staying in that training too. So I was concerned about that. That's all.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and we definitely, I hope we don't see many de-obligation situations where money is being brought back if something didn't work out with the training, but we'll be working with that more closely for the next 3 months.
Great. Amen. Amen to no de-obligations. Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Like that. So I just wanted to share what we did here in California. We only have 5 areas, 5 local pilots. And we asked everybody to come up with a proposal and how much money they knew that they had $600,000 to spend total, and we asked them to come up with a plan of how they were going to utilize the funding, realizing that that's exactly what these were flexible funds. And I worked with each one. They asked a lot of questions. We realized that as long as it is something that is allowable under WIA, that it should be allowable to be spent within this project. So we got back proposals, and we tweaked a few and worked with a couple, but we got 5 solid proposals and gave them the funds. Now we're finding that a couple of the areas are spending their flex funding well, and a couple are not spending them at all. So we're back to square one with a couple of them, and we told them from the beginning that we would pull money back if it was not spent in an expedient fashion, because it needs to be spent, as we all know. So this sounds like it's just more there just needs to be more connection with each one of the local areas and helping each other to make sure that they know how they can be utilized. Because they have been utilizing this flex funding for training, for both participant training, but also for staff training too, for disability awareness training for frontline staff. and other, the supportive services and the other services that you've been talking about. But this is great. I'm really glad that you guys, were able to put this together in such a short period of time, because we know how difficult it can be to get things changed in a long period of time, let alone a short one.
Yeah, right. And, well, we also, when you say about the underspending for some of those sites of yours, we have a similar situation here. There's a few sites that are just not spending any of these dollars, so, they're potentially going to forfeit these funds. But, yeah, excellent. I like what you just shared. Thank you.
Oh, no problem.
This is Tim Casella. We also have monthly conference calls where we can share ideas between all the DRCs, and we also got together a couple of times statewide. But I think that the areas that are underspending currently are probably going to increase spending with the new ideas that they found from their counterparts.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Dave, for the question. I'm going to try to mute the line again. This is Laura, and just something I want to throw out to people. So, Patrick, let me make sure before I ask this question. So, if I understand you correctly, in your original proposal, you did not request the use of flexible funds. Is that correct?
That's correct, Laura. We did not.
Okay, I think that's a really good point to make, and I think for those, other project leads on the call who may not have done that and are wondering, how you're going to potentially use funds, or whether there's a way to kind of do a modification to use them in a different way. I know some of you are round 3 projects. You may not know, but definitely take advantage of this discussion, because I think that's a really good point. It's one thing if you included them in your proposal. It's another, and I think many projects are reluctant to maybe go down that road, but New York is a really great example of how you can put forth a proposal, work with your federal project officer, and potentially, change the use of funding, and obviously in a very effective and successful way. So, I would hope that you would take advantage for those projects that may be in that situation to, talk to Patrick and Tim more about it. And you know what I might do in the meantime, Brian, Larry, I'm going to make sure Larry's still on the line. He is. Brian, I am going to unmute you, and Brian Ingram, I believe you can respond to the question about the applicability of the design that New York's talking about to youth projects.
Well, I'd like to give it a shot, because I thought it was a very good question. And I think, the reason it's a good question is because WIA youth services are set up a little bit differently from the adult services, in the sense that they don't have levels of service. You're either in youth or you're not. And so using flexible funding as an incentive to move somebody to a higher level of service is probably, on the face of it, not as obviously a good match. My question to you, Larry, is what are your youth programs focusing on? Which youth outcomes are they putting most of their resources into?
Larry, I'm going to unmute your line. Your phone line should be unmuted.
Okay. We are looking at helping youth to get employment. We're using work experience to helping youth increase their employability. Obviously, the older youth, we're looking not just at employability enhancement, we're actually looking at employment. But basically, we're looking at enhancements. Anything we can do to bring enhancements, and including supplying supportive services where appropriate.
Well, I mean, I think that makes sense, and maybe, and it's been my experience in a lot of the youth programs I've worked with that, they a lot of times they're going to focus on the educational outcomes, and the employment outcomes are sort of secondary. Sounds like in your case that's not necessarily true, that there's a lot of focus on the employment outcomes.
we're looking at employability enhancement with an idea any educational experiences would result in some sort of credentialing. We are very gung-ho on credentialing.
Okay. Well, I mean, could flexible funding be used to create funds for credentialing?
Perhaps, perhaps.
I mean, that would be the obvious correlation, I would think. Would be, I mean, whatever services are being purchased by the programs that you're trying to impact would be something to look at as a use for flexible funds, as a way to get customers with disability into, access to those services. And as long as you do what New York did, which is, they maintained those WIA procedures and standards, it's got two great benefits, which means, the first one would be you're not going to sacrifice the outcomes. So theoretically, you're going to be getting the same outcomes that you would with customers without disability. And secondly, you're going to make it very easy to maintain such a practice once your funds are gone, because you're having your funding comply with the funding that they normally use. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? I mean, so all they have to do is substitute formula funds for the ones you were giving them, and they can do all of the same things. So, I mean, I think that's really a strength of the New York model. It's one of the things that made me excited. And it is, I mean, you'd have to customize it to make it work in a youth program, but I think the basic principle might still apply.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Great.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks. Miranda, I'm going to turn it over to you. I believe you'd like to make a comment.
Yes, thanks, Laura. I was just thinking as we're kind of wrapping up our discussion today, and it's been such a great discussion, and I wanted to point out, some of the questions were, how are you measuring success? And I want to point out to folks that the great thing about this state lead peer exchange, and you're probably noticing this, but we hope to continue this into the future, is that we're going to want to tap folks who are in progress. You're in the middle of things. You've started something that's exciting, and you're still figuring it out. And I want to applaud, Patrick and Tim and Kevin for trotting this out and sharing it today, because, we'd wanted to do this. I approached them last month about it, and they're like, we're in the middle of this. We're just beginning. We're not ready. We'd like to show, our outcomes and our progress and our success after we've really done it. But this state lead peer exchange is really about, being able to share things with one another as you're doing them, because, we only have 3 years of grant funding. So if we're not talking about it while we're doing it, when are we going to talk about it? So I just wanted to throw that out there, and I want to hand it over to back over to Laura. And I've just really enjoyed the discussion today too. And as your TA, it's a lot of fun to be part of these things.
This is great. And really, Patrick, Tim, and Kevin, really want to thank you for sharing what's going on in New York. I think this is a great idea, and it really did come about in January, this past January, I think, or maybe a little bit before, of a TA liaison, realizing that the project was doing something that they really wanted to share. And there's not really any platforms to do this now. So this is kind of exciting, and I think as TA liaisons and part of the TA team, to really hear this discussion going back and forth. So with that, I am going to thank everybody again and close down the call. What I'll do is send the PowerPoint and the unedited transcript to all of the project leads so everybody can benefit from it, and really love this discussion. And for those of you who are just listening in, I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to what your peers are doing, and hopefully it's giving you some thoughts, and that you have a contact chart. We send it out with every project leads admin call, and I hope that you do in the interim reach out to your peers. I'm sure that anybody on the New York team leadership would be happy to talk to you further about this. So thank you all. Thank you, Miranda, for working with New York and sharing this. And New York team, heard a lot of great things about your state meeting, and appreciate as a round one project really sharing your insight and lessons learned. So with that, we'll end today's call, and everybody enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.